In the early 1970s, the Pentagon had a recurring nightmare, and it went by the name of Foxbat. To Western intelligence, the Soviet MiG-25 was an unbeatable machine of destruction. NATO radars had already caught this monster flying at a stunning Mach 3.2, more than 3 times the speed of sound over the Middle East. It was faster than any American fighter, had massive wings that suggested absurd maneuverability, and seemed capable of shooting down any United States bomber before even being detected. Generals in Washington were in a panic, spending billions of dollars trying to create something that could rival that phantom threat. But what the West didn't know was that the Soviet Union's biggest secret was about to fall from the sky, right into the backyard of an American ally. And it was all thanks to one deeply frustrated man. That man was Lieutenant Viktor Belenko. He wasn't a trained spy nor a famous political dissident. He was an elite pilot from the Soviet Air Defense Forces Fighter Aviation Regiment. To anyone looking from the outside, Belenko was living at the peak of Soviet prestige. But inside, he was boiling with indignation. Belenko began to notice the immense hypocrisy of the communist system. While high-ranking officers at the base lived in luxury and diverted resources, the pilots and mechanics faced miserable conditions. The Chugyevka Air Base in the far east of Siberia, where he was stationed, was isolated, freezing, and lacked basic infrastructure. To make matters worse, Belenko's marriage was falling apart, and he had just been passed over for a promotion he well deserved. He realized he was just a disposable piece in the Soviet propaganda machine. That was when he made a suicidal decision. He would leave, and he would take the regime's most precious asset with him. The fateful day was September 6, 1976. Belenko took off for a routine training flight. He knew this was his only chance. As soon as he separated from his formation, he turned off his radio to avoid being tracked and pushed the stick forward. Belenko nosedived the massive MiG-25 to just 100 feet above the sea, cutting through the waves of the Sea of Japan. Flying that low at such an absurd speed served one purpose: to completely vanish from Soviet and American radars. The problem was that the MiG-25 consumed fuel like a black hole. His tanks were emptying fast, and a heavy mist covered the ocean. When he finally crossed into Japanese airspace, Japan's Air Self-Defense Force Phantom fighters scrambled to intercept him, but Belenko was so low that he vanished from their screens as well. He was flying blind, running out of fuel, searching for any runway. Suddenly, through a gap in the clouds over Hokkaido Island, he spotted Hakodate's civilian airport. With no time to alert the tower, he lined up the heavy fighter and came down. The runway was far too short for a military jet of that size. The MiG-25 hit the ground violently, blew out a tire, overshot the end of the runway by hundreds of feet, and finally stopped in the mud, colliding with a radar antenna. Belenko climbed out of the cockpit, fired 2 warning shots into the air with his service pistol to keep curious motorists from a nearby road away, and demanded to speak with the authorities. He had made it. The news hit like a geopolitical atomic bomb. Moscow demanded the immediate return of both the pilot and the plane, threatening severe consequences, but the Americans moved fast. Belenko was granted instant political asylum by President Gerald Ford and was whisked away to the United States. Meanwhile, the MiG-25 was transferred to a closed military base, where U.S. Air Force engineers did what they had been dreaming of doing for a decade. They dismantled the fighter bolt by bolt. And what they discovered completely rewrote the history of military aviation. The great, indestructible Soviet monster was actually a technological bluff. The giant wings weren't built for agile maneuvering. They were just there to carry the absurd weight of the plane, which wasn't made of lightweight titanium, but of heavy hand-welded steel. The radar, which Washington thought was ultra-advanced, still relied on obsolete vacuum tubes, though the Americans reluctantly realized that this old technology made the radar immune to the electromagnetic pulses of nuclear bombs. The MiG-25 was not a superiority fighter. It was just a rushed interceptor built to climb in a straight line, fire a missile, and race back before its engines melted. The myth was broken. Belenko's defection changed everything in the Cold War. Realizing the MiG-25 was not the threat they had imagined, the United States adjusted the development of their new fighter, the F-15 Eagle, turning it into the most dominant aircraft on the planet without fearing Soviet technology. For the Soviet Union, the damage was worth billions. They were forced to change the radar systems, codes, and missiles of their entire fleet, as well as redesign their next generation of fighters, like the MiG-31. Weeks later, Japan packed the dismantled MiG-25 into 30 wooden crates and shipped it back to the Soviet Union, charging Moscow $11,000 for shipping expenses and the damage caused to the runway. As for Viktor Belenko, he changed his name, became a consultant for American intelligence and the aerospace industry, and lived the rest of his life in complete freedom in the West, fascinated by the simplest things, like the sheer variety of food in American supermarkets. He passed away in 2023 at the age of 76. Belenko didn't use bombs or armies, but his 90-minute flight on a September day shattered a superpower's illusion of power and altered the balance of forces in the skies forever.